war is not over. We are all going into the dark.
People of Kattegat, we have a great sacrifice! This is Lagatha!
So Vikings Season 5 Episode 10 recently came out. Most of the plot lines were unresolved, which was a bit disappointing. A couple major new plot lines were introduced, which is a different path they followed from Season 4, which kind of where each of the two parts had separate general plot lines. Unlike Season 5B, which will continue the plotline of the first 10 episodes. The trailer came out recently and there's really quite a lot. So the first three shots are really quite important. The first and third shots show a kind of a battle sequence with Bishop Hageman leading a force of English against Vikings, which tells us a number of things. Firstly, Hageman returns to England following the kind of predicted theory. He'll learn Viking ways of fighting and he'll use that against them, backing the Saxons when he returns to England, which as we see he clearly has. And moreover, he has soldiers for both Wessex and Bishop soldiers, which means that he has Alfred the Great's backing, or at this point just King Alfred. And since the show follows a rough historical timeline, it likely means that he will use his knowledge of the Vikings to help Alfred become Alfred the Great and defeat the Vikings at some point in the next season. So as far as the Vikings are concerned, they're clearly King Harold's men. With Rollo backing Ivar, Harold can't really threaten him, especially since he's lost quite a lot of his men in the conflict with Lagatha, especially after the conflict with Lagatha turned out to be kind of pointless for him. He lost Astrid, he lost his brother, he lost his unborn child, or what he thought was his unborn child. So it makes sense that he's seeking Valhalla. So as far as the prophecy of the seer is obviously intentionally ambiguous. This could refer to the war with England or it could refer to the war with Lagatha. I think it's far more likely personally that it would refer to the war with Lagatha than it would with England, because England was a discontinued plotline after the midpoint of early season 5, whereas the war with Lagatha is far more relevant. And it makes sense that Ivar would follow the pattern, the kind of the tradition that Viking leaders have, at least in the series, like Ragnar, King Horek, Lagatha, and Jarl Borg, who all kind of visited the seer to get prophecies which would sort of be played out eventually in kind of different ways. So the next 6 shots are all close-ups of important named characters, and each one of them has its own kind of individual details. The one with Ivar has soldiers in the background, which are clearly seen wearing helmets, and one has a sword out to Ivar's right. The shot with Lagatha has a bloodied face, or she has blooded face, which suggests again a battle sequence. The ones of Uber and Vidzak are actually indoors, which would suggest that they are again outside of any battle sequence. As far as Uber is concerned, it would make more sense that he is appealing to an ally since he is still loyal to Lagatha. And as far as Vidzak is concerned, it would seem more important that he will have kind of confrontation with Rollo about why he betrayed his father and why he betrayed Ragnar. As far as Hageman's shot, he has Wessex soldiers behind him on horseback. As far as Bjorn, he is wearing clearly visible battle paint and appears to have metal plates from his armor on his shoulder, which you can just about see. And this is the same armor that he in fact wore in Season 5 Episode 10, which suggests that, or most of these suggest that there will be a far more likely, however, multiple battles. And as far as Bjorn is concerned, he's just lost his adopted son Guthrum, his mother's just lost her kingdom, and Ivar's still out to get her. So it seems Bjorn is fully committed to this conflict, and the Mediterranean plotline will be completely discontinued in the latter part of Season 5. So the next couple of shots are quite obviously all in the same sequence. First, we see Ivar standing in front of a burning pyre in ceremonial dress, and it's important to note the 2 light posts at angles on either side. The next shot is Ivar's new army marching with torches, shields, and helmets clearly visible. They also have what is seen as Ivar's new flag/symbol. Therefore, Ivar is clearly rebuilding his forces, and what this means is it will be interesting to see what he does with them. And personally, I think it will be very interesting if he engages in a conflict with Rollo, because Rollo is now a threat to his power if the Franks are given too much influence. Especially with Lagatha's forces diminished and a strong military force of his own, he can now revenge Ragnar's defeat at Paris. So the next couple of shots again, quite obviously in the same sequence, we see the people of Kattegat around a small body of water, see Ivar's new army, there's a ramp leading up to a Viking longboat with a pyre, and Ivar pronounces the prisoner being escorted up the ramp as Lagatha. Now, I've heard the theory that it could be a trap or some kind of other kind of deception, but it seems that that would be quite humiliating for Ivar to declare this great sacrifice. So it seems to me that in fitting with the shot before, Ivar has or will at some point capture Lagatha and then will sacrifice her using the same ceremonial dress as he was before. And in one of the shots we see with him next, we see a woman standing next to him again, ceremonial dress. So it might be the slave he's freed earlier in season 5, which is quite early. So this kind of long and painful death is kind of fitting with his contempt for Lagatha. And furthermore, we see Bjorn isn't present in any of these shots. But given the one that he had and the one Lagatha had, it means that he could either fight a battle in which he is captured and he is killed, or he is somehow unable to save his mother. And the shot we see before will be a battle after and him attempting to gain revenge. And given that the conflict between Bjorn and Ivar has been building up over the last few seasons, it will be quite interesting to see Ivar facing the wrath of Bjorn in the very same way that Ivar wanted to avenge his mother. Um, Bjorn would now do the same to Ivar. The last minor detail is a shot of the people of Kattegat being afraid of Ivar, but this really isn't surprising and is quite fitting with the reputation he's built up amongst the Vikings. So the last important detail in this trailer is rather the lack thereof. There aren't any Floki scenes and there aren't any King Harold scenes. So it seems they might be killed off. This is notable as most important characters got close-ups, except for Rolo because he will obviously be quite important given how he fits in with the dynamic between the characters. King Harold, as mentioned before, might be killed in England, and Floki's death, if it must come, will probably be in the beginning of season 5B.